The Beatles' White Album is a weird, sprawling collection of songs, a very patch-odd collection.
It's like they were playing as each other's session players.
And without a doubt, the weirdest part of that double album is John's track Revolution 9. What the heck was that, anyway?
That is the perfect place to start, because that 8-minute track, it wasn't just a bizarre choice. It was the site of the most intense creative battle the band ever waged.
Wow.
Paul McCartney fought, strenuously, to block it from ever being on the album.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because for anyone who's maybe always hit the skip button on side 4, let's define what this thing actually is. It just sits on the record like this giant, chaotic question mark.
It does, and we have to be really precise here. Revolution 9 is not a song.
Right.
It's an 8-minute and 22-second sound collage. It's a textbook example of something called musique concrete.
Which means what exactly? Art made from recorded sound.
That's it. You're using recorded sounds as your raw material.
Yeah.
So what you're hearing is this chaos of layered tape loops.
A lot of them play backwards, right? Or sped up.
Exactly. Backwards, sped up, random sound effects, and these spoken phrases that just sort of appear and disappear.
And of course, the famous one.
The repeating voice saying, "Number 9, number 9." And on top of that, you get bits of classical music, a piece of Sibelius, all just mashed together with these really jarring edits and noise.
And the context here is so important. This wasn't something they just tossed off. John created this pretty much entirely with Yoko Ono, right? Working late nights at Abbey Road.
That collaboration is absolutely the key. John was so deeply influenced by Yoko's background and the radical Fluxus art movement.
So his goal was pretty explicit then.
Oh, completely. He wanted to aggressively push the Beatles into genuine avant-garde territory. He wanted to prove they were serious artists,
He felt boxed in.
I did. Boxed in by pop music. And he saw this track as his way of shedding that commercial skin and announcing himself as a capital A artist.
It's fascinating because the creation itself was kind of a declaration of war on structure. The engineers hated it, didn't they?
Hated it. There are stories of the staff being genuinely confused, wondering if the master tape was damaged because the sound was just so abrasive and unstructured.
And you can imagine that feeling spreading through the whole studio.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What John and Yoko were doing in those late-night sessions, it wasn't just experimental, it was isolating. They were in their own bubble, layering these sounds, and when John presented it to the others, the atmosphere must have been toxic.
Which brings us right to that battle for side 4. You have John's intense, abstract ambition just colliding head-on with Paul's very practical, melodic sensibility.
And remember, this is 1968. The band was already fragmenting. The unity was gone.
They were recording in different studios at different times.
Unity wasn't just gone, it was actively being destroyed.
Yeah.
You had band members just sitting around waiting for others or just walking out. And into that atmosphere, John introduces this huge non-commercial piece.
And Paul, the champion of accessibility, the guy who could craft the perfect 3-minute pop song in his sleep, he reportedly argued against it passionately.
Over and over. From his perspective, it was a practical disaster.
His arguments were pretty sound, though, from a certain point of view.
Well, yeah. Based on their entire career up to that point, he saw it as, and I think this is a direct quote, 8 minutes of unlistenable noise.
And he thought it would alienate their fans.
Completely alienate them. And waste valuable space on a double album. Space that could have held another real song. For Paul, the Beatles owed their audience something accessible.
Even their experimental stuff, like Strawberry Fields or A Day in the Life, it was still a song.
It still had a structure you could recognize as music. So the argument wasn't really about whether they could experiment. It was about where you draw the line.
So Paul was saying the experiment should serve the song.
And John was saying the experiment is the art. He believed, and Yoko really encouraged this, that art was supposed to challenge the audience, even irritate them.
They were so famous at that point they could afford to.
He thought they should. That artistic integrity meant rejecting those commercial rules. So you're seeing this ideological war fought over tape loops. And, well, we know who won.
John won. It made the album.
It did. But the cost of that victory, you can't overstate it. This conflict revealed a fundamental, irreconcilable split in their artistic philosophies, a split that would just get wider and wider until the final breakup.
And this is where the story gets really, really strange, because if it had just been a creative argument, that's one thing. But this track took on a weird, dark legacy all its own.
Entirely outside of the studio, listeners started interpreting the chaos, finding hidden messages.
The chaotic nature of it, with all the backward sounds and layered voices, it was like a perfect blank canvas for people to project onto.
Exactly. And the most famous projection, of course, is the massive Paul is dead conspiracy theory that just blew up in 1969.
Right. The theory that Paul died in a car crash in '66 was replaced by a look-alike, and the band was leaving all these guilty clues in their music.
And Revolution 9 was Exhibit A, the supposed confession.
The key piece of evidence being that repeated phrase, number 9, number 9.
When you play it backward,
It allegedly says, "Turn me on, dead man."
it's fascinating the sheer commitment people had to this. They were performing auditory gymnastics to make this garbled sound.
Of an engineer just saying number 9.
That sounded like a very specific, morbid message.
Yeah.
It was entirely about the listener's desire to find a deeper story in the noise.
And if that theory was born from, I guess, a kind of fan panic, the second interpretation, the one involving Charles Manson, was born from something much, much more sinister.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Manson and his family were out in the desert, getting more isolated, more volatile, and he took the White Album.
He thought it was a prophecy.
A prophecy. He believed the Beatles were talking directly to him about an impending apocalyptic race war he called Helter Skelter.
So how did Revolution 9 fit into that terrifying narrative for him?
He interpreted the noise on the track as the sound of the coming chaos. The number 9 became symbolic. He took this experimental soundscape as a literal blueprint for the murder he was about to unleash.
It's just a chilling thought, isn't it? On one hand, you have John Lennon trying to make this avant-garde art with his girlfriend, pushing musical boundaries.
And at the exact same time, you have Charles Manson taking that exact same sound and hearing it as a personalized command to kill.
It really solidifies the track's dark legacy. It shows how far art can escape its creator's intention.
It became an unwilling participant in one of the darkest chapters of that whole era.
So let's circle back to Paul's original fight. When he was arguing to keep it off the album, was he worried about any of this? About secret messages?
Not at all. Paul was worried about artistic coherence and commercial success. He was focused on the integrity of the record.
He was a producer, in a way.
In many ways, yes. The idea that this track would spawn conspiracy theories or influence a murderer was, of course, completely unimaginable. The messages were invented by the listeners. Paul was just trying to save the band from what he saw as self-indulgence.
So looking back, let's analyze it. Was Paul right to fight it, and was John right to push it through?
From a commercial pop artist's view, Paul was arguably correct. The track is still called self-indulgent. It's the least listened to track in their whole catalog.
It definitely damaged the accessibility that made them so huge.
It did. If the goal was massive, unified success, then Revolution 9 was a failure.
John's artistic vision, you have to respect that.
You absolutely do. From the perspective of an avant-garde artist, John was entirely right. The track was groundbreaking. It was daring. It proved the Beatles were willing to take risks nobody else was.
And it gave him what he wanted, to be seen as a serious capital A artist.
It was his ultimate artistic declaration of independence from pop music. And it did change things. It normalized noise and sound manipulation within a rock album's context.
It influenced generations of experimental musicians after them.
For sure. It's the sound of the band fracturing in real time. Revolution 9 didn't cause the breakup, but it was a glaring 8-minute symptom of the problem.
It was the moment where these two creative partners were just growing in such profoundly different directions.
Right. One toward pop structure, the other toward abstract challenge. And compromise just wasn't possible anymore.
There's such a great irony in this whole thing, too. Paul fought so hard to block it because he was afraid it would be unlistenable and just forgotten.
And yet, that very fight, combined with all the conspiracy theories that followed, ensured it would become one of the most famous, talked about, and deeply analyzed tracks they ever made.
It became infamous.
Exactly. It became infamous instead of just being experimental. It's one of the most studied artifacts of pop culture, precisely because of all that controversy.
When you listen to it now, to those fragmented voices and the backward loops, you're not just hearing a sound collage. You're hearing the internal warfare of the world's greatest band.
That tension became its meaning. It represents the moment the Beatles just couldn't be contained by one single vision anymore.
So the next time you get to that track, you really have a choice. You can skip it, like Paul probably wished you would. You can listen all the way through and appreciate John's radical vision.
Or you can just hear it as a historical document.
The exact moment when their creative tensions became too large and way too loud to hide. Well, thanks for joining us today. Whenever you feel like knowing more about the Beatles, visit us at BeatlesRewind.com. Every day, we do something new there. Song reviews, album reviews, movie reviews, book reviews, documentaries, trivia, all things Beatles. Every day, 8 days a week. You can find us on the website, BeatlesRewind.com. You can subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon Podcasts, practically anywhere on the inner tubes. The Beatles, all day, every day. We'll do it again tomorrow, right?
You bet. Farewell for now.
Until next time, when you listen.
Your mind conducts its own symphony.